clear now. A rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism that we must confront and we will defeat.
If you read his speech and listen to it carefully, much of it is thinly veiled innuendo, calling us white supremacists, calling us racist, calling us every name in the book.
You're really starting to hear things, Rand. Could it be a sign of a guilty conscience that Rand Paul and other Republicans apparently seeing a new White House rebuilding a moral foundation, calling for decency, condemning white supremacists, that they saw those as personal attacks? Meanwhile, Senate Democrats are working to purge parts of their chamber, particularly two members they say don't come close to the standard Biden is trying to set, questioning the role they played in the deadly Capitol insurrection earlier this month. 7 Democrats have filed an ethics complaint against Senators Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, calling for an investigation to fully understand their role in that day's events. They write, quote, "The actions of which we know demand an investigation and a determination whether disciplinary action is warranted. Until then, a cloud of uncertainty will hang over them and over this body." Joining our conversation, Steve Schmidt, former advisor to George W. Bush and John McCain, now Lincoln Project co-founder and MSNBC contributor, my longtime friend. Steve, I think a lot of our colleagues here would say I should have, but I didn't predict whining about saying we're going to eradicate white supremacy and freaking out when someone says we should start at the truth about the election before we debate tax cuts or other things, as where the Republican Party was heading.
Well, for sure. Look, Nicole, we have a real-life autocratic movement in this country that would be supported in the next election by 40% of the country. And at the end of the day, it's important to recognize the dimensions of President Biden's victory. He got more votes than any candidate in American history. That electorate, the American electorate, repudiated Donald Trump by some 7 million votes, and we turned away, at least in the executive office, from Trumpism. And so when you look at the elements that sustain Donald Trump, you have a propaganda element. It's sophisticated. Its most mainstream element is Fox News, the biggest element of the propaganda side. You see the cynical elites like Rand Paul, like the seditious Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and Ron Johnson and the conspiracy theorist nuts in the House of Representatives. You see the financiers of the movement, corporate America, that has funded the political committees that have elected them. But on the 6th, what happened is 147 members of Congress, after an insurrection, where an amalgam of fascist Proud Boys, white nationalists, white supremacists, neo-Nazis, conspiracy theorists, thugs, political extremists, stormed, occupied the Capitol of the United States. The Capitol of the United States fell to them. During the attack, the American flag was ripped down, and the MAGA flag was hoisted in its place. The American flag was used to beat a Capitol police officer, to bludgeon him. These cynical members are in a coalition that has mainstreamed the participation of the fascists and the white supremacists. Without question, they are part of that coalition. They wore their red hats and they assaulted the Capitol of the United States. So I don't know, a psychiatrist might say what Rand Paul is expressing there is a consciousness of guilt. But by any measure, those 147 members after the insurrection came back inside and they voted, all of them white. They voted to throw out, on no basis whatsoever, the votes of millions of African Americans, to disenfranchise them, to strip their voice, their constitutional rights, to nullify them, to silence their voice for the purposes of overturning an election, to install the loser of that election into power, which would have resulted in the fall of the 244-year American Republic. That's what happened. Nobody is seeking retribution or revenge for the attack against the people of the United States and against the people's government. We simply seek justice. We seek accountability. If we do not respond forcefully to the sedition, to the attempted coup, we guarantee that there will be another one. And so Rand Paul, this man who has claimed fidelity to the Constitution, has soiled his oath. He has betrayed it. He has become a leading figure in a cult of personality that sought to end the American experiment in the name of Donald Trump. And maybe that's why he feels guilty, but whether he feels guilty or not, he's profoundly unfit to serve in the United States Senate, and his conduct is abhorrent.
Steve, Elizabeth Newman, whose I think relationship with the Republican Party is different from ours. I think she still hopes that someone like a Mitt Romney or Ben Sasse can steer it in a different direction. Said yesterday that Republicans need to root out the bad actors, the Rand Pauls and the Lindsey Grahams and the Ted Cruzes and the Josh Hawleys on their own. Former national security officials say the same thing, that as a counter-extremism endeavor, you need people in the community to sort of beat off and root out the extreme elements. Do you think the Republican Party has the will to do that, and who would do it?
No, it's a fantasy. This party has been hijacked by the extremists. They're in control of it. As a matter of fact, they control it at a state party level. They control it at a national party level. Matt Gaetz made clear today that Donald Trump is the leader of the America First movement. The America First movement is the movement of the Republican Party. That America First movement, like the America First movement that preceded it in the 1930s, is a fascist movement. That's what the Republican Party is. Now, in any autocratic movement, one of the things that is a trait of it is the purge, and you're seeing that right now. After the vote on the 6th, the Republican Party fractured irreconcilably in a way that's not so different than what happened to the Whig Party after the vote in the Kansas-Nebraska Act that allowed for the expansion of slavery westward. That destroyed the Whig Party because the slaver and the abolitionist couldn't sit in coalition together. So you saw the incredible courage of Liz Cheney on a matter of principle say, I'm a conservative, but I'm for democracy. Now you see the attempt to purge Liz Cheney. But as we move into the primaries in 22, what side will be ascendant? The vestigial Republican side that tried to go along to get along, or the QAnon coalition of Marjorie Taylor Greene? Who will win these primaries? I think the autocratic side is going to steamroll the vestigial pro-democracy wing of the Republican Party, which is a minority by membership. They're going to steamroll them like the German Wehrmacht did to the Belgian army in 1940. Now, what does that mean? It means that we will have more clinically insane people elected to the Congress. But it also means that we'll see Democrats be able to win elections in competitive districts or even districts with a slight Republican advantage as the majority condemns this. There are only two ways to win a fight. You bring your opponent to submission, or they exhaust you while you're trying. We have no place to compromise with the white supremacists, the white nationalists, and the people who believe the government is run by a global cannibalistic pedophile ring. There's no place to meet in the middle. We have to crush them politically, and we can't ever lose an election at a national level to these people again, because it could be the last election that we have in the United States. Their intent is clear. So we cannot be exhausted in the prosecution of the fight for democracy against people who have made their fidelity to autocracy and to Donald Trump clear. We have a real-life fascist movement, autocratic movement that Donald Trump has started in America. And that movement led to, for the first time in American history, since the first transition of power in 1797, we had the transfer of power, but for the first time, it was not peaceful. It's not a moment, it's a process. And it was a bloodstained process because of the incitements of Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and Kevin McCarthy, Donald Trump and Donald Trump Jr., and the other members of Congress like Mo Brooks, who incited those people. We have a big question as a country, and it's this. Law enforcement is saying by the end of the month, there may be 1,000 of the incited who stormed and rampaged and caused death and mayhem in the Capitol under arrest. What about the inciters? What about the people who told the big lie? What is their moral responsibility? What will the institutional consequences be under the rules of the Senate or the House of Representatives? What will the American people demand? The president called the nation to a great national purpose, to crush COVID and to defend American democracy. And that's the question on the table.
Someday we're going to start this conversation at 4 so that we don't run into any time limits. Because I think you're right. And I appreciate your clarity and your candor. Thank you, my friend.
Good to be with you, Nicole.
When we come back, it's the end of an historic week. The new president, a new vice president beginning to confront crisis after crisis after crisis. What do the early days of the Biden presidency tell us about what to expect going forward? Till then, White House, back after a quick break.
How can
It was left fractured by the last administration. Remember, it ended with President Trump calling Trudeau dishonest and weak. And there could be tension in today's call because Trudeau has already criticized Biden's decision to cancel the Keystone pipeline that runs from Alberta to Nebraska. It could affect the Canadian oil industry in a significant way. So we are still waiting for a readout from the White House on how that call went, and we'll let you know when we get it.
Thanks very much, Caitlin Collins over at the White House. Important news. Let's go to Capitol Hill right now for the latest on the start of the Trump impeachment trial in the Senate. Our congressional correspondent, Ryan Nobles, is joining us right now. I understand, Ryan, you have some major breaking news.
Yeah, that's right, Wolf. Any second now, the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, is set to take to the Senate floor. And our Manu Raju is reporting that Schumer will announce a timeline for the impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump. And that timeline is expected to start on February 8th. Now, that is a little bit earlier than what we were expecting earlier when we were initially told about the plans for the impeachment trial earlier today. Of course, Schumer announced this morning that Speaker Pelosi intends to hand those articles of impeachment over to the Senate on Monday morning, which initially could have meant that the trial could begin as soon as Tuesday. It now looks as though Schumer has cut a deal to push the start of the trial back into February. Now, we're not exactly sure what that means for all these other negotiations that are happening here on Capitol Hill in terms of the confirmation of Biden and cabinet members, and whether or not this is an attempt by Democrats to try and woo over some Republicans in an attempt to get them to vote to convict President Trump. But a significant development about to be announced on the Senate floor here in mere moments. Senator Chuck Schumer is going to say that the Senate impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump will take place on February 8th.
Will the article of impeachment, Ryan, as far as we know, still be submitted from the House to the Senate on Monday, even though it's now not going to start until the week of, February 8th?
Good question, Wolf. We have no reason to believe that timeline has changed. And what this shows really is that the Senate really does control how this process plays out. And once the Speaker hands over those articles of impeachment, it's really up to Schumer and his team to decide how the whole process will play out. So at this point, it looks as though they're going to wait a little bit before they actually begin in earnest with the trial itself. As opposed to beginning on Monday, it's now going to take some time for it to get into the process, and they'll begin that process in early February. You have to wonder exactly what went on in these negotiations that led to this point. Perhaps Senator Schumer enlightens us a little bit when he makes his way to the Senate floor here in the next few minutes.
Well, it was clear, Ryan, that President Biden earlier in the day indicated he wants a delay. He wants the Senate to focus in on confirmation of his cabinet nominees, other senior positions that require Senate confirmation. He wants them to deal with substantive legislative issues to help the COVID pandemic relief bill. Biden said specifically, and I'm quoting him now, Ryan, the more time we have to get up and running to meet these crises, the better. So clearly, it sounds to me like that Schumer and other Democrats in the Senate were impacted, were influenced by the president.
That certainly seems to be the case here, Wolf, because there is no doubt that there was a disconnect between leadership in the Senate versus what the White House was asking for. President Biden has never really been all that keen on this impeachment proceeding. Now, his office, Jen Psaki, his press secretary, said earlier today that they were going to be hands-off, that they weren't going to be involved in the deliberations over the legislative process, that the president understands how the Senate works, having spent so much time here, and he was going to leave those decisions up to them. them, but he's also made it very clear that his priority is not to deal with holding President Trump accountable for what happened on January 6th. He thinks he should be held accountable, but his main priority is getting his administration and his agenda.
All right, hold on for a moment. Chuck Schumer is now speaking. We'll listen.
It's dispensed with.
Now, Mr. President, we have made good progress in our efforts to determine the timing and structure of the impeachment trial of Donald J. Trump. For the information of all senators, the House managers will come to read the article of impeachment at 7 p.m. on Monday, January 25th. Members will then be sworn in the next day, Tuesday, January 26th. After that, both the House managers and the defense will have a period of time to draft their legal briefs, just as they did in previous trials. During that period, the Senate will continue to do other business for the American people, such as cabinet nominations and the COVID relief bill, which would provide relief for millions of Americans who are suffering during this pandemic. Then, once the briefs are drafted, presentation by the parties will commence the week of February the 8th. The January 6th insurrection at the Capitol, incited by Donald J. Trump, was a day none of us will ever forget. We all want to put this awful chapter in our nation's history behind us. But healing and unity will only come if there is truth and accountability. And that is what this trial will provide. Now, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that upon the conclusion of morning business on Monday, January 25th, the Senate proceed to executive session to consider the following nomination. Executive calendar number 2, the nomination of Janet Yellen to be the Secretary of the Treasury. Further, that the time until 5:30 be equally divided between the two leaders or their designees, and that at 5:30 the Senate vote without intervening action or debate on the nomination. That if confirmed, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action.
Without objection, so ordered.
Now, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it adjourn until 3 p.m. Monday, January 25. Further, that following the prayer and the pledge, the morning hour be deemed expired, the journal of proceedings be approved to date, the time for the two leaders be reserved for their use later in the day, and morning business be closed. Further, that upon the conclusion of morning business, the Senate proceed to executive session to consider the Yellen nomination as provided under the previous order.
Objection, so ordered.
If there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it stand adjourned under the previous order.
All right, so there you have it. Major news from Chuck Schumer, the new majority leader in the U.S. Senate, that as we reported earlier, the Trump impeachment trial in the U.S. Senate will not formally take place until the week of February 8th, although there will be some preliminary activities going on January 25th, January 26th. But Ryan Nobles, a good 2-week delay in this, presumably to give the Senate an opportunity to confirm cabinet nominations put forward by the new Biden administration.
You're right about that, Wolf. And there's really 2 layers to this timeline. As you asked before, whether or not the impeachment articles were going to be sent over to the Senate next week, that's still going to happen. So they will be in the Senate on Monday. They'll be read on Monday. And then on Tuesday, there'll be the swearing in of the senators and the issuance of the summons. From there, there's going to essentially be a 2-week break while both sides are able to get their ducks in a row and file their legal briefs. Now, within that timeline, this really serves 2 purposes for the majority leader, Chuck Schumer. First, it gives the Republicans who are concerned about this process an opportunity for them to get their arguments together. Now, there were some Republicans that were complaining today that they thought that this was going to be somewhat of a rush job and that that President Trump was not going to get the full due process that should be afforded him under these circumstances. This now gives him, a period of time to get his legal briefs in order, to come up with a team that will defend him. We know that he's hired a Maine lawyer, but also to get his arguments in over and perhaps even offer up any witnesses that would be on his behalf. Now, on the other end of it, it also frees up the calendar for, what you mentioned, giving the Senate the opportunity to push through these confirmations of Biden cabinet secretaries. A process that's been long delayed, that, under normal circumstances and normal administrations, many of these cabinet secretaries would have already been long confirmed. But because of President Trump's unwillingness to accept the results of the election, that really delayed that process. So now this gives the Senate the time to really focus on those confirmations.
Like Law and Order. It didn't look like My Cousin Vinny, because Mitch McConnell managed to keep the line and block
trial on the week of February 8th.
The real home run king, Hank Aaron, was 86.
Hank Aaron died.
What benefits can I get with a Medicare Advantage plan?
New Medicare plans may include free may raise, providing seamless transitions from near to far vision with incredible sharpness.
The real start of the Senate impeachment trial again.
evidence and decide, is this a person who constitutionally should be allowed to hold these powers again, or should that be off the table?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ari. I mean, what was done last year by Mitch McConnell was it turning the whole Constitution on its head. It was a fraudulent trial. They made sure there weren't any witnesses. And you were right to remember that I was the only Democratic senator to vote to hear the witnesses in the Clinton trial. And I found that going through that process caused me to believe that it was not appropriate to convict President Clinton based on the evidence I actually saw. The American people should be again presented with the evidence. Now, as I heard some people saying who were involved in the impeachment last year, this one's going to be a lot easier because everybody saw what happened. They heard what the president said. The evidence is probably going to be a little easier than trying to figure out the intricacies of Ukrainian politics, which was involved in the last one. So, but the job is still to not announce in advance what you're going to do. As Michael said, take a look at the evidence, see what feels right, decide whether the president has done things that are wrong enough to justify removal, and then decide whether it's right for the country and if it's a good thing for the country for him to be removed and disqualified. That's what the senators should do, and I believe they will do it this time.
Very important. I'm just getting some developing news here. Our producer telling me that since we've come on the air, Senator Schumer has formalized the plan. The articles will arrive Monday, which we mentioned. And then the actual formal start of the trial part, Senator Schumer's office is now saying, and he's confirming in public, would be February 8th. So that's developing news on the timeline of great interest to many people. On a smaller note, Senator Feingold mentioned and gave shout out to Fallback Friday, which we appreciate. And Michael Steele's actually in tonight's Fallback Friday. Next time we'll get you in there, Russ. Thank you to both of you.
I enjoyed it. I will look forward to it, Michael.
All right. Amen. And Michael, I'll say briefly, the last time Senator Feingold did it, he did it with, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was with Waka Flocka Flame. Is that correct?
That is correct. I had to figure out how to say it first, but yes.
Yeah, and they were talking about, I was watching.
30, we're at 32 in Paducah, 30 in Harrisburg. Early tomorrow morning, temperatures will range between the upper teens in southern Illinois to maybe the upper 20s in our Tennessee counties. And through the day tomorrow, we will be rising quickly through the 20s into the 30s. Here's 11:30 a.m., 37 in Paducah, 35 in Harrisburg. Tomorrow's a sunny day of weather. Some clouds move in from the southwest in the afternoon. Here's 10 p.m. Don't expect any precipitation Saturday. Now, the first of the active weather is Sunday morning, what we call overrunning. That's warmer air moving in the atmosphere up where the clouds are, while it's still below freezing or near freezing at the ground. And notice 4:30 a.m. could be some sleet pellets in southern Illinois. That would be about it. It's not going to last long enough to
camera. A lot of progress in Benton on the new courthouse. And normally in January, you might not get all that done. It's normally a much wetter month and a colder month, and that's not been the weather we have been watching. It is going to be cold tonight, some teens, a possibility in our northernmost counties. We'll all see temperatures below freezing. Tomorrow just looks to be a cold day. Threat tracker bar all the way to the bottom. Sunday, the chance for showers starts to roll in, especially late in the day. And by the time we get to Monday, it does look like we're going to see some rain. Early in the day is the focal time, and heavy rain is a possibility. We'll run that down as we move through the forecast. Clear skies coming at us tonight, and temperatures dropping off through the 20s with light north breezes. Big range right now, 32, the report coming in from Mount Vernon. 37 in Marion, but it's 42 in Murray, 44 in Poplar Bluff and in Union City. Cape Girardeau reporting 39. Widen the view out. There's a batch of some real winter temperatures. A lot of teens showing up. We talked about.
The president deploys these executive orders on COVID and other issues.
You know, and Daniel, let's talk a little bit about that, because as you know, the president's allies in the Senate, they are, as Manu reported earlier in the day, and Jamie just reported, they are increasingly confident that the Democrats don't have the 17 Republican votes they will need to convict.
That's right. President Trump's allies certainly have that, and it's not by accident. I mean, there's a lobbying campaign going on. The lobbying campaign that Jamie's excellent reporting showed us about the people who want to convict Donald Trump in the Republican Party. But then there's an equally pretty aggressive lobbying campaign for those who don't and think that it will split the party even more and it will make President Trump more of a martyr and so on and so forth. It is a real divide. That divide continues. But the other factor here that I'm hearing more is that the people who are kind of in the, let's move on and not convict him camp are finding that they're having most success with the Republicans on the fence in saying, this is so unprecedented, the notion of convicting a president who's no longer in office of impeachment, which is supposed to remove him from office, that why would we do this? We don't know how much that argument is going to kind of rule the day, but it seems to be making some inroads, according to my reporting, with some of those Republicans on the fence.
I think you're right. Abby,
once more, people trying to reward people for doing bad and punish people for doing good. The country has flipped. It's upside down. To me, there shouldn't even be a debate. It shouldn't even be debatable. Everybody and their brother seen what happened. Everybody heard what happened. It wasn't just on social media. It was on mainstream media. And to think that people are going to get up there and try to defend the actions of a traitor, if you ask me, that makes them just as guilty as the person that committed the crime. In other words, now they become an accessory to Donald Trump's treason, his treachery act that he committed upon to the will of the people. I would be ashamed. Absolutely ashamed. I would be appalled if I had an opportunity of standing in front of a large gathering of people and trying to defend Donald Trump and what he done towards revving up, manipulating. He uses the word rally. I use the word rebelrizer. The bottom line is he has constantly used violent intentions in his speech that has been misleading to the weak, depleted, feeble mind. And because he has done this, it has led to what happened on January the 6th. It was Donald Trump that said that he could kill somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. It was Donald Trump that wanted to take somebody in behind the barn or somebody in behind the alley and whip the heck out of them. He has used expressions of violent behavior all throughout the 4 years in one terminology or another. And of course, whenever he said that I will be with you, That's like saying, I'm for you. Whatever happens, I will be with you. I will be for you. I will be the one that takes charge of this. So be strong. Fight for your country. I think he said something like that. And march down there to the Capitol. Well, it just so happens, whenever they got down to the Capitol, they kept marching, and they kept marching, and they kept marching until they got in that Capitol. There was so many security breaches that happened that day. It makes you wonder if the whole thing wasn't some sort of a screenplay to where everybody knowed what was going to happen and how it was going to happen, and this is how that they had plotted it out. It was the damnedest thing that I think that I've ever seen. Once more, whenever you hide people in plain view, when you hear the wolf again and again crying wolf, people get tainted to that. They get callous to that. And even though it looked like it was a bluff job towards Donald Trump and his loyal followers, come to find out it wasn't a bluff job after all, now was it? Because they was willing to break the law to prove a point that they was going to go in there with a surrection of bringing the Confederate flag, a white supremacist group, into the Capitol. And that was one of the very things that the Union fought up against in the making or the manifestation of the Confederacy. That was one of the main things that they objected to, was how that they was trying to go about doing this. A lot of times it's not so much what we do, but how we go about doing it. And the way that they went about doing it, these white supremacists, was totally unethical, illegal, wrong. They even committed heinous crimes in doing so. They killed people. They destroyed public property. There's nobody in their right mind that is going to support the actions of a mob that done what they done January the 6th in 2021. Nobody, unless they themselves are that type of person. Rootless, deceitful, mean, cruel, don't have no respect for the law, etc., etc., etc. I could go down a long list. But to have somebody represent Donald Trump in his defense, to me, falls right back on the same cliche that America has been guilty many, many times, either on a federal level, state level, or a local level, towards rewarding people that does bad and punishing people that tries to do good. This is no longer the same United States of America as it was whenever I was raised up. Whenever I was raised up, you tried to defeat the works of the devil. You didn't join hands with the devil. You tried to defeat the works of the devil, regardless whether it come in the form of rapes, murders, theftery, laziness, lies, whoremongering or whores. I mean, all these things that break the commandments of God and the will of God are the very things that America used to stand for back years ago. Well, that's what I thought too, until I stood in front of a federal judge in Paducah, Kentucky, and was basically ordered for a eval evaluation up in MCC in downtown Chicago. For about 6 months, it got taken out of my life in trying to evaluate me towards a group of people that probably thought that I was going to be naive enough that I was going to stick my own foot in my mouth while being evaluated, to the point that they wound up putting me in a crazy house. That was exactly what Land Between the Lakes was leaning towards. That was exactly what various individuals in Kentucky was trying to do. They was trying to get me institutionalized. And if they could have got me institutionalized, that would have basically sealed the deal towards killing the ministry. The ministry has been fighting now for the past 30 plus years towards me getting out and doing things on my own, regardless whether I stepped into public radio or public TV, or putting out a lot of literature in the message that the messenger had to put out to the general public. The ministry has suffered tremendously towards nobody wanting to support the ideology that comes from the teachings of the Bible, simply because that's the way that I have interpreted it. The ministry has struggled. But in 2005 was whenever the hits start coming towards trying to destroy the ministry, because if they could have destroyed the founder of the ministry, they would have destroyed the ministry. Ever since 9/11, they have been attacking the Windmill Ministries and trying to dissolve it, trying to destroy it, trying to eradicate it. And if they could have done what they was set out to do in Kentucky, that would have basically sealed the deal. But now, though I've had to plead guilty to two or three different charges that I never should have pleaded guilty to, just to either stay out of jail or get out of jail, I'm now free to be able to speak to my base, speak to my people. And once more, it will be up to them towards what they decide. And if they continue to what would be the right word in what I'm thinking about, standoff, or do a standoff position towards not supporting the ministry, then the words that I have left behind, they will still live on. The pictures that I have left behind will still live on. The message that I have portrayed to the American people and the world will still live on. That's the part that they don't understand. You can come out here and you can destroy signs. You can destroy this. You can destroy private property or public property. But the thing about it is, as long as we have data, as long as we have the capability of taking a picture and recording it, it don't matter if the Waterfields between Cydonia and Sharon decides that they was going to tear down a 4x8 sign. It basically took me about a day to make. It don't matter if they tore down the sign 5 minutes after I left the scene or 5 hours after I left the scene. The fact of the matter is, I was smart enough to document the moment. Just like right now, I'm documenting the moments. I'm voicing my opinion to the world. And it will be up to them in whether or not they want to support a true ministry that supports true peace, or if they just want to dibble-dab around and talk about peace. That's what has gotten us in trouble for the past 30 plus years. We've been just dibble-dabbling around talking about peace, but in reality, we really didn't want peace. The courts didn't want peace. The jail attendants didn't want peace. The probation officers didn't want peace. Nobody truly wanted peace. They say that they wanted peace, and they'll talk about a peace of mind, but as far as true peace, as far as a revival, nah. So if we're not going to get peace, I can see it evolving the opposite direction, just like I predicted in the year 2005, towards a bloody road ahead, sending the 43rd president a t-shirt that read a bloody road ahead. You know, if you don't want to do it God's way, well, then let's do it man's way. But I guarantee you, man's way is going to be the improper way, and man's way is going to continue to backfire again and again and again and again and again, going all the way back to 1988, whenever the Reagans and the Bushes should have done the right thing, but they chose not to up in the White House. This is deep. This is pertaining to a conspiracy against the heavenly kingdom. It's the same type of conspiracy that happened with the pharaohs. And the conspiracy wasn't just against Moses, but it was against Moses' God. The conspiracy wasn't just about killing the firstborn that come from Joseph and Mary. It wasn't just about Jesus. It was about the kingdom, the very thing that Jesus represented whenever the conspiracy went out towards killing all firstborns. And you can look at the Bible again and again and again where Satan has made his move towards wanting to stop something from happening, and all hell come back at that particular sector, at that particular generation, because of various people that didn't do the right thing for their own people. And whenever I say their people, I'm talking about the devil's people. Because there's no doubt what went on with the Reagans and the Bushes towards keeping it confined, trying to suppress that information to the rest of the churches, that wasn't a deed, a godly deed. That was a devilish deed. Just like whenever Jesus spoke to one of his disciples after telling his disciple that he was going to wind up perishing and dying on the cross. And then the disciple spoke up and said, no, Lord, we'll even fight to thee, even unto the end. And Jesus looked at him and said, basically, you know not what spirit you're from, for it has been predicted. It has been selected by an evangelical supernatural being, God, of what is going to occur and how it's going to occur. Like I said, man can try all the little snubby little moves he wants to make. And every time he does it, it's going to backfire just like it happened with the pharaohs. I would not even begin to try to justify Donald Trump's action and how that he manipulated a group of people into an act of insurrection, of attacking his own people. As far as I'm concerned, at 12:01 midday, they should have turned the airplane around going down to Florida, and they should have brought it back to D.C. with Donald J. Trump in it. And that's whenever handcuffs should have been slapped on the President of the United States, and he should have went to jail. Charges should have been submitted right then and there, because he was no longer the president. He's now considered a prior president. And the legal proceedings should have began at 12:01 after the plane turned around. Now, that's just my opinion. My opinion is just like everybody else's. It don't cost you nothing. But Donald Trump knows just exactly what type of base and what type of crowd and what type of environment that he was creating the day that he got on that stand January 6th and was saying the things that he was saying. He knew just exactly how that he was approaching that situation. Thanks again. Good luck to all of us. Looks like the trial, from what I can understand, is going to begin the 8th of February, pertaining to the second impeachment trial. I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to blackball him to the point that he'll never have any type of political clout back in the United States government, which as much money as he got or does have, especially after he swindled his followers out of $150 million after the election was over with. As much money as he's got, I'm pretty sure he'll probably move to like Sweden, somewhere like that, eventually. I'm not making a prediction here, but that would be what I would do. I would move plumb out of the United States and probably surrender my citizenship if I was him. and go to another country. Because whenever they get through with what they're going to do here, he will have a smear and a brand on him the rest of his life that will be defiant in what that he wanted to do with his brand all his life. In other words, now it's finally come back and bit him in the rear end come February the 8th. And instead of it being an asset, it will be a liability. And that's punishing him very conservatively. Like I said, if it was me, if I had any say-so pertaining to the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, Secret Service, I would have turned the plane around at 12:01. He probably had it fixed to where the plane had done already landed and he was no longer on federal territory before 12:01 ever happened. In other words, he was probably already down in Florida on his territory come 12:01 because he left the White House very, very early that morning. The 20th, the day of the inauguration of swearing in Mr. Biden, President Biden. Good luck to all of us, and once more, shalom.